What about your situation, Sol? Will you be staying at Tottenham?
I'm staying.
Now we've got an interview coming up with Daniel Wynne. You have been commentating for Spurs for 19 seasons. Congrats on that, I guess.
Hence the grey hair. Right?
You are a trustee of the Tottenham Tribute Trust.
I am.
And when I was thinking about how to introduce him, how to introduce you, I was like, I think that the podcast is probably the most appropriate medium for you because your voice is one of the most recognisable voices. I think for Spurs fans, I think people recognise your commentary.
Too kind.
Yeah. Okay, so before we ruin your day by talking about Spurs, let's talk about commentating. So this is what you do every game. What is the match day routine, and what exactly does your job entail?
Cool. So I've changed recently. I was the Spurs TV commentator for 17 years, and for 6 of those years it was the away games as well. So I'm based on the gantry at White Hart Lane. In the old stadium, it was obviously hanging off the roof, the top of the East Stands. Coldest place in the ground, but an amazing view. And did the away games as well for 6 years. At the beginning of last season, I changed. We're trying to beef up some of the services for the access supporters. So I do a commentary now for the visually impaired. There's 2 of us that do it. We do like they used to do on Radio 5. 22.5 minutes each half, and then when the other one's commentating we give analysis. And basically there's a bunch of blind and visually impaired supporters that come into the ground. They get the atmosphere, they can hear what's going on around them, but they can't see obviously, so we paint the pictures for them. So it's a different commentary totally to the TV stuff. The TV, the pictures did the talking, whereas now we are the pictures for them, we are their eyes. So we have to describe it, literally everything, what the goalkeepers are wearing, different colour boots. I've got a thing about which players wear gloves. I can't stand players that wear gloves, right? So it's that type of thing, just painting the pictures that you and I would take for granted being inside the ground.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's really a really good job to do. For you though, you've been commentating with Spurs for, as you say, 19 seasons.
Yeah.
Have you got a favorite match or a favorite piece of commentary?
Favorite piece of commentary? That's not for me to say. I mean, I think the Danny Rose debut goal, I quite enjoyed that back in against his lot in April 2010. I liked it when the Inter Milan game when they were European Championships. Van der Vaart ran through and scored, and I remember saying, "In Tottenham lead the European champions." I mean, that was quite enjoyable. I'm very lucky. I love what I do. There's been some great times. There's been some not so great times. But listen, I'm getting paid to do what I love doing, and talking about Tottenham, it's the easiest thing in the world. And I could talk rubbish for hours, and as you're about to hear. So it's really good. I just love it. Favourite games? I think obviously the Arsenal 5-1, the Chelsea 5-1, League Cup semi-finals going right the way back. The first goal I did for Spurs TV, the first game I did, it was the first goal that Saturday was going to be the 10,000th goal in the Premier League. It was December 2001, and Les Ferdinand got it for us against Fulham, 4-0 win. And it was so noisy, and I heard my producer shout into my headphones, "That's the goal." So at least that's what I thought she said, and as it happens, I guessed right, and I went with it, and that's the 10,000th goal. So yeah, it was all right. It went well.
I'm just wondering, because as a commentator, there's kind of a bit of press and media surrounding the commentators are allowed to be biased, and whether or not how much it affects people listening. I don't know if because you're commentating specifically for Spurs.
Yeah.
If you're allowed to have that bit of bias and negative on Spurs.
I mean, I can say things like we and us. You have to be respectful for the opponents. Especially on the TV side, the opposition would get a copy of the game, the referees would get a copy of the game. So it's a totally different experience to what some of my friends inside the ground would see. I would talk to them after the game, and they see the game totally different. They haven't got the benefit of the instant replays that we get. I'm a Spurs fan. I've been a season ticket holder since I was 5 years old. About 10 years ago, right? So I've been going since 1975. So I'm just giving my age away there, right? So yeah, the passion comes out. You may well have heard some of the commentaries. Naturally, when we score a big goal, that it just comes out in your voice. You can't help it. But yeah, you have to be respectful. Like I did the game when Arsenal won the league at White Hart Lane, and that wasn't much fun. But what can you do? You have to do it. It's your job.
I can imagine that. That must have been horrible for you.
Yeah, it was.
So I think we are required to talk about Tottenham. It's not a great, very enjoyable thing to do at the moment. But I think we have to sort of analyze the problems. For you, what is going wrong, and what's happened over the past week now with 10 goals and all that?
I think it's a hangover from the Champions League final. To be honest, that's just an honest reaction. Yes, we probably exceeded expectations getting there. We rode our luck getting there. The Ajax, obviously, that 96th-minute goal in 95 minutes or 5 minutes of added on time. The Man City game, we rode our luck a little bit, but we got there. And it just went horribly wrong that day. And I think as a professional sportsman, they must be thinking, are we going to get another chance? Are we going to get a chance like that again? And Pochettino has spoken openly about the devastating effect that it had on him. And I just think players are coming to terms with it now. It's like, are we going to get another chance? That's what I think it is. There's all sorts of rumours and counter rumours out there. I don't get involved in any of that. All that I can see is what's in front of me. And it's not been. It's essentially the same team, a couple of different players, obviously, but they're playing like a bunch of strangers at times. And, Alderweireld and Vertonghen, two of the best centre halves in the country, they can't defend at the moment, and something's not right. It will get better. We've got Watford next game. No such thing as an open goal, but that's as open goal as you're going to get at the moment. The team bottom of the league, in what you're going to beat is 3-0 now, right? But yeah, so we need to get back on the horse quickly and just get going again.
I was going to say, do you think that there's hope? Do you think there's a light at the end of the tunnel at the moment?
Yeah, listen, every club goes through it. I mean, Arsenal went through it over the last couple of years. Man United going through it right now. We've had a couple of bad runs in the past, not as bad as this, obviously, but typically over the last 2 or 3 seasons, when we've had 1 or 2 bad results, we then go on a 10-11 game unbeaten run. So, ever the optimist, you have to be, don't you? It's what keeps you going. So that's what I'm going with.
How do you weigh in on the sort of speculation now about the manager's future? Do you think that it could happen? Do you think he could go?
The managers can go at any time. It's not my role to speculate on whether he's the right man or not. He's done fantastically well for us. He lives and breathes and breathes the club. He's the first one in the training ground every day, and he's hurting. That's obvious. You can see it on his body language when he's sat in the dugout. He's hurting. It's not what he wants. He's a professional. He wants to win. He wants to excel, and he will turn it around.
I don't know. Like you mentioned, like Arsenal and Man United have had these bad run of patches. Yeah. I don't know if you agree with or if you want to see, but do you see similarities between Arsenal's last few years and what happened and currently what's happening at Spurs, or do you just think it's all...
That's actually a very good question, and it kind of links into what Avi just said in relation to the future of the manager. Has he been there too long? Arsene Wenger, he changed your club around, right? I think the press he got at the end was totally unjustified, but I'm on the outside looking in, right? What he did for your football club, he changed it beyond all recognition. And for me, he deserves an immense amount of praise for that. But yes, there are some similarities perhaps, in as much as maybe he's been there too long, or maybe the players aren't responding anymore. I don't know. I don't think that's the case, but that's a school of thought that's out there. You're both on social media. You would have heard those rumours. Personally, I'm absolutely convinced he's the right man. He's got that team going. He's got rid of the deadwood before, and I'm sure now he will get those players playing again. So whilst there's definitely similarities, I just think, he's been a little bit unlucky with injuries this season. He's brought in 2 players who have hardly played. Obviously, Sessegnon hasn't played. Lo Celso, I think 2 or 3 half games here or there. When they're back and running, it gives players something else to think about. They're not just a shoe into the starting 11 anymore. And there's a big squad there. 2 years ago, Eric Dyer was one of the first names on the team sheet. Now, he's got to think about it. He's got to work harder in training, and that's got to be a good thing.
I mean, so people have been talking about all sort of solutions to the current problems at Tottenham. Do you think maybe playing youngsters and playing people like Troy Parrott and Tanganga, do you think that maybe it's quite extreme, but to just play the kids, as they say, do you think that could be a solution?
I think it's a mixture. I think, Tanganga impressed me so much pre-season, as did Parrott. They are potentially first-team players, hopefully for many, many years to come. He tried them in the Carabao Cup. It didn't work that night for whatever reason. But there's definitely a hope for them. And, you saw Newcastle yesterday, right? A youngster came in on his debut and he's ended up scoring the winning goal. It's schoolboy's own stuff, as Barry Davies once said. So, yes, there's definitely a role for them. And I think, Harry Kane was a young, hungry player at one point, and Parrott's exactly the same now. And I go back to what I said a couple of minutes ago. If you can get other players involved, that gives the established players something else to think about and look over their shoulders and think, I've got to work and give the extra 10% so that these guys don't come in and take my place.
Yeah, it's a real problem for Spurs, I guess. I think you've got a point there. To move on to an issue that I've been quite passionate about. I wrote an article about it in Jewish News. I don't know if you read it.
I did.
Thank you very much. So I know you've been quite passionate about it yourself, and you've talked about it. Since I found an example from 2012 when you were talking about it. What is your position on? I mean, the real question is what do you think about non-Jewish fans singing Yidami? That's the question. Yes.
Yeah, so in another life, I was chairman of the Supporters Trust. So I've spoken about it many, many times on TV, on radio. My personal opinion and a point of law, it's all about context. If Spurs supporters inside the ground use that word to support their club as a point of law, an unequivocal fact, it's not offensive, because they're using it as a term of endearment, a badge of honour, a call to arms, and all that kind of stuff. And you cannot be prosecuted. It's a fine line, however. If out on the street, some opposing fans or even Spurs fans use it when they're not supporting their team, that's when the problems arise. The David Baddiel argument is, well, if Spurs fans carry on using it, then Chelsea fans will use it against them. And that's why Baddiel first started to talk about it, because as a Jewish Chelsea fan at Stamford Bridge, he was always angry at Chelsea fans, the Yid, and he felt uncomfortable with that. So that's why he started his campaign. I don't use it myself. I personally don't like it, and I didn't like my kids using it when they were younger. But I accept totally that when Spurs fans inside the ground use it, it's used as a badge, in the same way that some members of the black community use the N-word. But if I was to use that word to them, it would be offensive. Some members of the gay community use the word queer, puff, etc. in their own bars, in their own magazines, in their own messages on social media, etc. But if I was to use those same terms, it would be offensive. And that's the line, that's the limit for me.
Do you think the word is inherently offensive, though?
Well, by origins, yes, it is, and that's why Spurs fans started using it, as you well know, as you put in your article, which I did read a couple of months ago. Yes, it's an offensive word, but what troubles me now is that a whole generation of people living in London, living in Great Britain, forget the connotations from 50, 60, 70 years ago. And to me, that troubles me, and I don't want that to be lost. I don't want the negative connotations to be forgotten about, because too many people were affected by it all those years ago. And that's why I personally choose not to use it. But I would always defend Spurs fans using it while supporting Tottenham. And I think Spurs as a club have got it right by not promoting it, by not selling items of memorabilia, T-shirts, etc. Because to me, that would be one step too far.
Do you think there's enough education, though, from Tottenham or just from football in general on it? Because you get fans that have no clue what they're singing. And
yeah, I agree. I mean, Spurs would say, and I have every sympathy with them, it's not their role to educate the community. They're not there for that. They're there as a football team. Chelsea, every time we play Tottenham, say that this word shouldn't be used, they will ban it, etc. And Chelsea as a football club, and I know very, very recently the Chelsea chairman went over to Poland. He went to the camps, and he's seen it, right? And that message is filtering down the ranks at Stamford Bridge, and it has to. But it's a society problem, I don't need to tell you the problems in society. Look at the Labour Party, right? That's frontline politics. It can't get more rife than that.
Moving on to a man, though, and finishing with a man that can be described with many a word. The man whose name is in the title of the podcast, Sol Campbell. He obviously did what he did. And do you understand, or I don't know, what's your opinion on what he did, basically?
If you Google Sol Campbell and Tottenham, I was chairman of the trust at the time, spokesman of the Supporters Trust, and I was the one that was called out when he left and when he came back, and my quotes appeared on the back page of The Sun the next day, the ultimate act of betrayal. That was my quote, right? What do I think? Listen, at the time, and I'm going to get slaughtered by Spurs fans for this, at the time, from a footballing perspective, I can understand why he made that decision, right? What he should have done is what Steve McManaman did at roughly the same time when he left Liverpool. If he came out and said it, I'm going to be leaving in the summer, we wouldn't have liked it, but you know what? We'd have accepted it. But he lied. He said consistently, I'm not going. I don't need to talk about it in the January because I will renew my contract in the summer. I'm not going anywhere, not now or in the summer. That was his quote, right? From a footballing perspective, as it was then in 2001 when he left, Arsenal were flying, Arsenal were winning things. Wenger was, revolutionising football at the time. Thierry Henry, yada, 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 right? The French World Cup side and everything else that goes with it. You don't need me to labour that point. And Arsenal at the time are more likely to go on to win trophies, as proved to be the case. So from a footballing perspective, as a professional sportsman, I understand why he did it. How he did it, no.
Do you think that the fans, some of the songs that they sing, do you think that they may be justified or are they too far?
No, much too far. End of the day, he's a human being. He did what he did. He made a mistake. You can boo him, hiss, whatever, right? Make your feelings known. But some of the songs, burning effigies, really? Really? No, too far.
I think that's a position that I remember the first bit mainly is the position that to move to Arsenal was effectively okay. It's just he did it the wrong way. Is that what you're saying? Is that
Look, right. You draw comparisons to Pat Jennings, right? Pat Jennings left. He went to Arsenal. He's come back and he's a Spurs man and he's a legend. He still works at the club. He's there as a match day host. He's got legendary status and rightly so. Why? Because he did it the right way. Okay, he had an axe to grind and he left Tottenham. He wanted to make a point to the directors at that time in the mid-70s. So he left. And how could he hurt the Spurs board most? By going to Arsenal. Right? So, but the way he did it, he didn't lie to anybody. He just said, right, I'm going to Arsenal. Campbell did it totally differently.
Could you see any point in the nearby future something like that happening again or not, of a player moving either way?
Yeah, really? Of course. Listen, it's happened before and it will happen again. Steve Walford, Willie Young, Terry Neal, you had George Graham, right? Arsenal men, Spurs men that have gone the other way, right? Could it happen again? Yeah. The reality is footballers today, I think, are cut from a different cloth than they were in the 70s. You're never going to see a Ledley King again. You're never going to see a John Terry again. You're never going to see, a David O'Leary. From boy to Liam Brady, from boy to man at one club. Steven Gerrard. I don't think that's going to happen again. That the agents are involved. The majority of them want the big payout. So it's quite likely that it could happen again. Yes.
That's a surprisingly nuanced take on Sol Campbell from a Spurs fan. I think that's a moment of history, I guess, we've made. That's it, though. Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
We've really enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed it too.
Sure, very much so.